I've been in ministry for 43 years. Yeah, that's right, 43 years. It's my 43rd year in ministry. In the first 3 years of that, I was a full-time youth pastor in our church. And then after a few years of doing that, I became an associate pastor in our church. And I was just kind of doing things like pastoral care, small groups, running various activities, kind of just involved in the life of our church in a significant way and in a great way. I really loved that. And then after 10 years being on the pastoral team, I became the lead pastor of our church, a senior pastor, and led our church for, excuse me, 20 years. And the last 13 years, I've been a consultant. We started Grow a Healthy Church 13 years ago. I've been a church consultant and coaching pastors for the last 13 years. I'm going to share with you truths, triumphs, and tragedies today. Things that I've learned along the way, a few proverbs that I've written. Some of them I've written, some I haven't. Some triumphs, things that have worked really well for me, and also some tragedies. Things that I'm going to talk about my, excuse me, I'm going to talk about my biggest failure, my biggest regret, and what I would have done more of, what I regret not doing more of. So let's jump into, firstly, the truths. Here's a proverb I made up. If you want a quick harvest, plant radishes. And I notice people are jumping on. So hi, Carolyn. Thanks for joining us today. If you want a quick harvest, plant radishes. Now, I don't mind radishes, but you can grow radishes in 6 weeks. But if you really want to enjoy some beautiful grapes, I've got a grapevine in my backyard, you have to wait months. You have to prune, you have to wait, you have to fertilize, you have to keep the birds off, you got to keep the rats away and everything. You know what? Short, quick harvests are great, but I think the best harvests are those that are long term. I think I learned pretty quickly on to build for the long term. I remember when I became the senior pastor of our church back then in the 90s was called Shiloh Faith Center. Yeah, great 70s charismatic Pentecostal name. And after a while, I thought, gee, we really need to change our name. And I remember talking to a guest speaker from overseas in our church, and he was a veteran leader, great leader. And he just said, well, you want to change the name, but you're going to be around here a long time. There's no rush, really, is there? And I thought, you know what? He's right. There's no rush. Let's do this in a timely, good manner. And I find as a young leader, I wanted to get things done really quick, but quick harvest, radishes, longer harvest, grapes. You can do a lot more of grapes than radishes. Second truth is that going alone in ministry is like climbing Everest without a Sherpa. Hey, Brad, thanks for joining me. I'm just looking over here for any of the comments. Feel free to leave a comment. And great to have, we've got the whole C3 head team. Yeah, awesome, Brad. That's awesome. If you've got any questions, throw them into the comments and I'll get to them sometime during the chat today. Yeah, here's another little proverb, another truth. Going alone in ministry is like climbing Everest without a Sherpa. Now, I have no aspirations to climb Everest, and never have, never will. But I can imagine trying to do that without a guide, without someone to help carry the load, to help guide you, someone who's been on the journey before or is aware of you and looking after you. And I think of all sorts of people, like my good friend AJ. I think of Rod, Nigel, David, Brian, Rowan, Mark. I mean, I could keep going on, Rob. I could keep listing names of people here. I just could keep listing name after name, Stephen, Russell, all sorts of people along the way who have been friends in ministry. And that's been so vital for me because the way I'm wired, I like to talk to people. I am outgoing, sanguine, but I just find it's impossible, I think, to do well in ministry, to survive well in ministry, unless you have people that you're walking with. So don't go alone in ministry. Get a Sherpa, get people, make a point in ministry of having friends. And I still have friends that I catch up with regularly to share my heart, my life, and also have a bit of fun as well. A third truth, your character will sustain you in the places your gift will take you. I mean, there's a bundle of different ways to say this. Proverbs not original with me, not like my Sherpa or radish one. I like writing proverbs, but this proverb you find all around the place. Basically, is that whatever gift you have, whatever capacity and ability you have to lead people, to inspire people, to move people, that gift will open doors for you, will take you places. However, the only thing that will keep you in that place is not your gift. It'll be your integrity, your character. And I learned early on in my Christian life, and have sustained this through my ministry life, is that to confess sin is a really healthy thing to do. 1 John 1:9 says, if you confess your sins, the Lord is gracious to forgive you, but not only forgive you, but to cleanse you. So I think to have a consistent walk of confession of sin to the Lord is really actually very important for you in your life. And I think it enables your character and your integrity to grow. Because let's face it, we all get tempted and we sin. And I think probably one of the main things that has enabled me to stay in ministry is the fact that those massive sins, those deep wounds to integrity that will blow you out of the ministry, embezzlement of funds, immorality, abusing people, those big sins, if you like, if I can call them that. I think sins are varying levels of grade, if you like. Those primary sins that will take you out of ministry is something that I've never yielded to, never embezzled money from the church. I've never committed adultery. I haven't been an abusive leader, been a strong leader at times, bit of a bulldozer, but I haven't been abusive of people. You talk to people who've worked with me, I think you'll find that'll stand true, that testimony. So it is recognizing that you are a human being who's very subject to temptation and who does sin. But if you keep short accounts with the Lord and build your character, build your integrity, ultimately be an honest person, that'll last you the long haul. And in spite of temptations, you'll get through to the other side. Hey, Justin. Hey, thanks for joining us. Thank you. An amazing achievement. Thanks very much for that. Over 40 years in ministry and still serving, still having a go. Truth number 4. I like this one. This one really kind of, this warms my heart. I made this one up. Healthy churches grow to their optimum size. I kind of wrestled for a number of years and a period of time with that phrase, healthy churches grow, because I realized that unhealthy things grow. Cancer grows, weeds grow, unhealthy churches grow. Yes, they do. So it's not that health equals growth and growth equals health. And I found pastors, this is really doing pastors' heads in, because they'd be saying, well, my church is growing, therefore we must be healthy. Or the reverse, my church isn't growing, it must therefore be unhealthy. I thought, no, that's not right. That's really quite condemning and damaging. So I came up with this phrase, healthy churches grow to their optimum size. And I believe every church has an optimum size. And I think to equate growth with health, I think is a half truth. And I think it hurts more pastors than helps, to be honest, because you get growing, you think, oh man, we must be doing great, everything's fine. Well, not everything's fine, but we're healthy. Well, not necessarily. And what determines optimum size? Well, 3 things: call, context, and capacity. What's Jesus called your church to do? What's your immediate context, your demographic, your city, your town, your region, and your capacity? And the thing you can control there is your capacity. You can grow your capacity. You can become a way better pastor, a way better minister, a way better church leader than what you are today. I want to keep growing in my capacity as a church leader. I just turned 71. Retirement's not on the horizon for John. I'm looking to grow my capacity, keep doing things that increase me and enlarge me as a person. And so I think you can do a lot with that capacity area. The 5th one, the 5th truth, I love this from Dr. Ian Jagelman, not original with me, but my goodness, this is an absolute, as we say in Australia, ripper. Ministry builds people, leadership builds churches. Ministry builds people, preaching, leading a small group discussion, counseling, praying with someone. That'll build people, bringing them to Christ, getting them baptized in water. Great. But leadership builds the church. In other words, mobilizing a group of people on a common purpose, on a common mission, and moving to achieve that as a united group. That's what leadership does. And the great thing is you can actually add leadership skills. Back when I was a young Christian, leadership really was basically about having great character. We didn't focus so much on the skills of leadership. And before that, it used to be about inspiring Hudson Taylor type stories of great Christian leaders of bygone eras and them inspiring us to be a great leader. Then that whole emphasis on be a person of character, which is a great foundation. But then John Maxwell turned up. And I remember 30 plus years ago reading the book, Developing the Leader Within You. And it was a revolution to me, realizing that, wow, I may have a leadership gift or I may not, but I can build and grow and develop leadership skills. I can get better at casting vision. I can get better at mobilizing people. I can get better at coaching people. I can get better at organizing my world and organizing our church and structure it in a way that'll position it for growth. I can get better at running staff, of leading staff, of having staff meetings. I can get better in so many different ways. And that book was a revolution. It's in my top 10 best books for John that changed me as a person and as a leader. And I do encourage pastors, don't only develop your pastoral ministry skills, develop your pastoral leadership skills as well. And you'll do that over time. And as trial and error, you'll make plenty of mistakes. You'll do the wrong things as a leader. You'll get an education. At times it'll be expensive. You'll pay with it. You'll pay for it with your personal pain, but that's okay. A couple of more truths before we go into the triumphs area. Nothing significant gets done without significant sacrifice. I think of various things that in our 43 years of ministry journey, building our building at Hepburn Heights here in Perth, bought 5 acres of land, built a worship center, and the sacrifice of our 1990s congregation. They sacrificed finance, time, effort, energy, prayer, focus to build that building, to get that land and build that building. Significant sacrifice. That building's still standing today, and gospel is being preached and ministered in that building and will do for many decades to come. I remember when I started Grow a Healthy Church, I did 72 flights in the first 10 months. Don't think about that too long. It's only 2 flights a week over 10 months. My goodness, I didn't repeat that after that first year, trust me. But I've done, I counted up recently, 547 flights in the last 13 years as part of our, if you're not prepared to make a significant sacrifice, you will not build a significant life. And I think everyone has the opportunity to build a significant life. And this comes right down even into your marriage, into your family, and so on. I think sacrifice builds significant elements of our world. Number 7, I didn't write this one, but I wish I had because it's brilliant. Nothing changes if nothing changes. And you have to become willing to keep changing, to keep adapting, to keep shifting, to keep doing things in a different way. And I've changed some things doctrinally. Back in the 70s, what I thought about the second coming of Jesus, I thought Jesus would be back by the mid-1990s. I missed that, didn't I? I have different aspects of ways of viewing the second coming, the rapture, the tribulation, all that. Look at it very differently to how I did 40, 50 years ago. Women in leadership was a significant change for me doctrinally as well. I always kind of was happy and thought, yeah, women in leadership, no problem, had kind of agreement with it. And I would say gave lip service to it. And then had a big shift in my thinking and did a lot of study, a lot of reading, a lot of talking, a lot of listening, and ultimately shifted from a lip service leader about women in leadership to being a champion and ordaining women in the ministry and having women on our church board and really championing women in ministry. And that's been a significant change. And look, nothing changes if nothing changes. I think you have to be a leader, a pastor, a church leader today, whatever area of church leadership you're involved in. I think to be someone who says, you know what, change is painful. There's always loss in change. I can't say I really enjoy change. I'm not a great fan of let's change it all. Oh, here we go again. But I realized that I have to be a leader who adapts to change, who moves with the change, even if I find it painful and difficult. And if there's a loss for me in it, even more so. But nothing changes if nothing changes. Really, thank you for joining me today. I want to encourage you to have a look in the description here on the YouTube channel. You'll find links to various church leadership quizzes. You can do a quiz. They're really cool to do, actually. You get some good resources from us, all free. The quizzes are free. Check out also the links there to the hub. And I've got some things coming down the track in the next little while about the sprint private coaching and the Getaway Consult Retreat. If you're interested in those, click the link in the description below and just book a discovery call with me. Have a chat to me about how I could help you in church leadership. I coach dozens of pastors every year, and we'll be happy just to have a yarn, have a chat, and see maybe where I can help. Hey, Rob Smith here. Thanks, mate. Awesome, John. It's great for not only for pastors, also better understand what goes on behind the doors and building a successful church. That's actually true, Rob. I think I might be able to I think I can throw that over there. And I guess that comes up. I think that'll come up either on Facebook as well. I agree, Rob. I think there's a lot of principles in church leadership that cross over into all sorts of areas. But I think sometimes it's helpful for church members to get a bit of a behind the scenes look at what really helps the church do well and be successful. So good to have Brad Holder up there in Port Edwin, in the far northwest of our state of West Australia here, joining here with he's got his whole team with him, having a look at this. Really appreciate that as well. Let's jump into some of the triumphs, some of the things that have been really great. And I'd have to say the greatest triumphs of any things that have been brilliant for me really do center firstly around people. I'll share some of the things that I really have enjoyed seeing and producing in ministry life, but really around people. My wife, Diane, to me, the fact that we've been married, what are we approaching now? Next year, it'll be 47 years. Most of our married life has been in ministry, and Diane's been unbelievable support and strength to me, and we've done it in partnership, in different ways in partnership over the years. She's been a pastor in our church. She's been a coach of pastors as well and Grow a Healthy Church. But I think I think my greatest triumphs lie in my marriage, and then also in my children. And raising kids in ministry is not always easy, but our children are just wonderful. Aaron and Luke, wonderful kids, now married, and of course, providing us with the great joy of grandchildren. I have 4 wonderful grandsons, age 5 to 14, and they're a great joy of my life. So I think my greatest achievements, my triumphs, if you like, lie in my marriage, in my family life. And then I think in the people that I've worked with and connected with over the years. I've named a few of my friends already, but I can't even begin to name all the people I've worked with, connected with. To me, the greatest thrill in ministry, I think, is to see people thrive, to see them find Jesus, walk with Jesus, and thrive in their life in what they're meant to do. That to me is the greatest thrill. A few other things that probably that I would see as triumphs, things that I feel like are achievements that make me feel good about myself as I look back, was having an encounter in a staff prayer meeting, a pastoral prayer meeting with God as my father. And we all have this father wound, don't we? Our dads are imperfect. I'm an imperfect father, imperfect grandfather. We all have this dad wound that needs to get healed and fixed, I think, before we can really see God as our father. And I remember weeping in this prayer meeting as I had this understanding of God as my dad, as my father, as my Abba Father. And it was just a moment. I'm a huge believer in encountering the Holy Spirit, encountering the presence of God, and allowing God to heal you, change you, shift you. And this encounter of God as a father was transformative. Even for days afterwards, I would say the word Father in prayer, and I'd be, oh, Father. Wow, that was a moment. Another moment, there was also weeping. I'm not a big weeper. Movies with good music, I weep there, but I'm not a big weeper. is at a minister's camp. When we used to have camps back in the day, not conferences, we'd have camps. And being in a meeting, at the end of the meeting, the Holy Spirit burdened me deeply about people who didn't know Jesus. And I ended up on the floor, weeping, groaning, just a whole sense of burden and intercession and crying out to the Lord for lost people. And I think that shifted me and really helped me when I became the senior pastor of our church, leading our church into be more outward, planning churches, reaching lost people, praying, setting up our service to reach lost people. I do take it back to that moment of encounter with the Lord that broke my heart for the lost, for people who are far from Jesus. I think that was a real triumph. I think in the 90s, when our church shifted from an inward church to an outward church, I'd see that as a huge triumph, became far more aware of people who weren't lost and began to reach them. Planting churches, I look back, over the 20 years of leading the church, we planted a new church every 3 years. And we just prayed and got a vision for it. I had to strengthen my heart about we're going to do this and cast the vision and just prayed for church planters. And God raised them up and we planted them out with varying degrees of success, but a phenomenal, I love looking back on the fact that our church, when I was leading it, planted churches, and our successes, Jason M, have continued to do that, planting campuses in the DNA of our church. They've done a great job in doing that as well. I think I mentioned women in ministry. To me, that's a triumph of ordaining women, having women on our church board. You might be watching this and thinking, I don't agree with that, don't like that. That's okay. Whatever you like. Your context is your context, mine is mine. So I'm relaxed about that. Building a brand new building. 25 years ago, we moved in. The building is now debt-free. Jason M have led us brilliantly in paying the building off. Hepburn Heights, great building, big auditorium, cafe, all sorts of rooms, 5 acres of land. I'd see that as something that'll definitely outlive me, and something that I am, I think in a healthy way, proud of having led our church through that. It wasn't all about what John did, trust me. It's the 1990s congregation of our church that built that building. They were the ones who prayed it into being, sacrificially gave, lent into the whole thing and made it happen. A couple other big wins, triumphs for me, if you like, is that during our building program, I actually had a 15-month episode of clinical dark, deep depression to the point where I even contemplated taking my life. This is nearly 30 years ago and well behind me, trust me. And that was a challenging time. And I remember continuing to pray, continuing to sit with the Lord through that 15 months. And it was due to a relational breakdown with a mentor. I knew why I was depressed. I just couldn't get out of it. And it was a black hole of, will I survive this? Will I get the other side of this? Some days it was a matter of, can I do the next appointment? Yes, I can. All right, let's do that. Can I do now the next appointment? No, I can't. I'm going home. I had days like that during that 15 months. I just snapped out of it. But I remember one thing that really stood with me is that I was sitting in my room in my normal prayer place, and I didn't refuse to give that up. And I just sat there, and there was this sense of, I don't know how I'm going to get out of this. And I had a vision, a mental picture, if you like, where I just saw a hand come down from heaven and holding my shirt collar, and I was dangling like a rag doll. And this hand was holding me by my shirt collar as I dangled there. And I heard the Holy Spirit say to me, you can let go, but I never will. And I know that's the Holy Spirit because it's way too clever for me. You can let go, John, but I'm not letting go of you. And just that grace and goodness of God to hold me through that. And I came out the other side with the help of my wife, my friends, my board, key people in my life got me through to the other side, and Jesus got me there as well. I think another triumph, and forgive me for this being about stuff that I've done, but I've just discovered in the last 13 years with Grow a Healthy Church, the bigness of God. God is just amazing. We're doing things that we never thought we would do when we started Grow a Healthy Church 13 years ago. Never thought I'd consult in Europe and the UK. I never thought I'd have a YouTube channel. Hey, hit the like button while you're hanging around the YouTube channel. Subscribe. If you're not already a subscriber, please subscribe. And look, share this video. I think this 40 years of ministry, truths, triumphs, and tragedies, I think this could help a bundle of people. Thanks, Aaron, for that. Thank you for your openness. Thank you. Yeah, look, I probably the last 13, 14 years, I've been sharing about that depressive moment and how strenuous it was and how close I got to doing something horrendously tragic and terrible. And by the grace of God, didn't. So, yeah, look, I never thought I'd have a YouTube channel, never thought I'd have a podcast. Always thought podcast, never thought a YouTube channel. I didn't know what I'd be doing to the degree of doing the hub membership resources we have. I never thought I'd be doing things like this. God is way bigger than what we think he is, way bigger. He does things that are phenomenal, that are awesome, that are just huge. And don't underestimate the bigness of God and his ability over the long haul to achieve in your life way more than what you think you're going to achieve. You know, if I go back to me growing up in Perth as a young guy who didn't know Jesus, and I think about my life, looking back on 71 years, I am constantly amazed, and I tell the Lord I feel so privileged and blessed to live the life I've led because of the bigness of God. God can do far more than you can think or imagine. Trust me. Okay, the tragedies. Let's tell you my biggest failure, my biggest regret, and also as I look back on 30 years of pastoring, what would I have done more of if I had my time again? And I don't want to have my time again. I'm not interested in doing another 30 years of pastoring. I don't regret doing it. Absolutely loved it. Just don't want to do it again. Happy to keep moving forward and ultimately to heaven. I've got this proverb. I like this one. I wrote this one. I like this. It's funny. Church leaders face more problems than a Weight Watcher working the afternoon shift at Krispy Kremes. I like that. I think it's true too. Church leaders, we face a lot of problems. Weight Watchers working at Krispy Kreme's not a good idea. You're gonna have a little nibble here and there on those gorgeously sugar-laden donuts. They are magnificent and absolutely brilliant at spiking your blood sugars. So what's my biggest failure? Well, my biggest failure is a decision I made to bring a pastor in from outside our church onto our staff. And I have no problem bringing people onto our staff. Seth Brooks is a great addition to our youth pastor sort of regime. We've had youth pastors. I was the first paid youth pastor in our church, and we still have 40 odd years later, a paid youth pastor in our church, which is just phenomenal. Brilliant. I love it. Seth Brooks was brilliant. And I don't mind bringing pastors in from another church into our church and adapt to the culture, but I won't mention this person's name. But they came onto our staff, were on our staff for 4 years, and then we discovered they were doing things that were unconscionable, immoral, not illegal, but just horrendous behavior that you would never want a pastor doing. And we suffered deeply in that. I had to dismiss the pastor on the spot once we had proven the stories were truth and he confessed to them. We had to sack him on the spot, and that was one of the worst nights of my ministry life. And the fallout in our church for 2 or 3 years, because we had victims, it was challenging. It was my biggest failure, bringing that guy onto our team. And, you know, just I look back on that failure and go, what else could I have done? And you always think of things you could have done better, but that I still feel wounded by that, I'd have to say. I still find when I talk about it in public, it's a bit easier on a YouTube channel, on a camera, but talking about it in public with other people, I still feel the emotion of it come back, and that's 20 years ago now. So some things stay with you in ministry. Not all things just wash away and shift off you. Some things do stay with you. My biggest regret is not a people thing. I do have regrets about people that I hurt along the way and people I had to apologize to and things I did wrong. Sure. Look, I'm human like everybody else. I'm like any other pastor. I made mistakes. Absolutely. Didn't get everything right, got a bundle right, but just did a bundle of things that were just, I remember one of my pastors telling me when I was having a moment at an Easter event pre-service, having a moment of bulldozing. And one of my pastors said to me, "John, go away. Just go away. You're not helping here." Okay, got it. Move on, John. Move away from the seat and go and pray or do something else. Calm down. So yeah, plenty of mistakes on my behalf. I'm sure people could fill you in on those. But my biggest regret relates to buying land. We had this thing called BHAGs, big, hairy, audacious goals, and I wanted to achieve some big things. Besides, after we moved to our building at Hepburn Heights, I kind of wanted to float some big things that I wanted to do. And one of the things we wanted to do is that north of our property, way north, it was bush area. There was a place called Alkimos. It now has suburbs in it, but back then it was just bush. And I had a BHAG, a big, hairy, audacious goal to actually buy land in that area. I thought if we could pull that off, that'd be brilliant. That's what Anglicans and Catholics do. They buy land in remote areas, and ultimately people live there and they build a church there. And I had this dream. We never got to do it. And I regret that, because we ultimately, Jason planned a campus out that way later, which was kind of like, gee, a bit of land out there would have been phenomenal for that. And we just never got it done. I kind of got prostate cancer. That kind of knocked me around for some years, a year or two. And then I kind of ended up leaving, handing over the church and so on. And it just evaporated, disappeared. It's one of my regrets. I still regret it to this day. And I think it's kind of okay, because I think as a pastor and a leader, you should always have aspirations. You should always have things that you're looking at for the future. And I think it's wrong to kind of go, I've achieved everything. I got nothing else left. That's it, done. My kind of theory and thought is, you know what? It's okay to have a regret like that, because I was still dreaming. I was still hoping. I was still aspiring. I was still reaching. And I hope I go to my grave with some aspirations about grow a healthy church that are unfulfilled, because I want to remain a dreamer, a hope person. Okay, last thought on the tragedies, and thanks for joining with me today. Mark Edwards has put a comment up. I'll read it first, then show it. People relate to your vulnerabilities. When you start in ministry, you generally have no unresolved conflict. 40 years, you have a number of key unresolved conflicts and mistakes. That's so true, Mark. Mark is a brilliant pastor for many churches here in Perth, Western Australia, and merged a Baptist and the Church of Christchurch, my goodness, and survived and grew the church and did brilliantly, and now pastors in Melbourne. He's a really good friend, fellow Fremantle Dockers supporter. AFL football for those overseas. Google AFL football, watch the highlights. It's fun. I think it's true, Mark. 40 years, you're going to have a number of key unresolved conflicts, things that you cannot tie the threads together. They're like one of those kind of rugs, aren't they? They look perfect on one side, and the back you see all the threads hanging out. They're threads that you're not going to finish off. There are mistakes you've made that you can't undo, and it's part of being human, part of being a leader. So important to remember that about your pastor as well. Well, what's the one thing I would have done more of if I had my time again? This is something that I actually encourage pastors to do. In fact, I bang the drum about this with pastors. I would have run more emerging leader groups. And I did run these groups. We're gathering. My first one was called an MDG, Ministry Development Group. And I remember the 4 couples who came to our house and sat in our lounge and had time with them, spent them. One of them ended up on our staff in our church. One of those couples, 2 of those couples still in our church, and the other 2 went different ways. And at different times, I've run groups, emerging leader groups. And I wish now I look back that I'd done more of that. And I recommend to pastors every year, do something with emerging leaders or even established leaders. Veteran leaders, get them together for 3 months, 12 months, whatever. Read a book together, pray, eat, laugh together, weep together, journey together, grow together. I wish I'd done more of that. And that's probably, it might be one of the subconscious reasons why I do encourage pastors to do more of that. Run emerging leader groups. There's things on my blog. You can check them out there. I'll put a link in the description actually to that blog post, because I think it's helpful for pastors to actually think through, and church leaders to think through, who am I developing? Who am I discipling? Who am I actually helping to grow on the journey? Well, there you have it. My 40 years, well, it's in my 43rd year of ministry, my truths that I've shared, my triumphs and my tragedies as well. And really, thank you for joining me and, joining me on the live. Thank you for jumping in and joining me on live. I really do appreciate you doing that. But also, there's no doubt that over the next few years, I think hundreds, thousands of people will actually watch this video and hopefully receive some strength and encouragement and life from it. And that those of you who are pastoring, that you receive some truth and help you survive your tragedies and help you have a few more triumphs through it. Those of you who are watching this and thinking about becoming a pastor, I can thoroughly recommend being a pastor. Answer the call of God. As Jesus calls you to ministry, answer that call. Be faithful to him, serve him, and you will have your own truths, certainly your own tragedies, but also you'll have plenty of those triumphs through Jesus. God bless you, and thanks for being with me today.